Hey there, Marvel Rivals fans. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a deep dive into the Empire of Eternal Night Midtown map, an ominous urban battlefield filled with hidden paths, vertical zones, and a perfect ambush points for Squirrel Girl. Whether you're out to baffle your foes or clutch the win for the team, these tips will help you unlock her full potential in this map. Let's get started. Alright, and we're gonna kick it off on the defensive side, and honestly this is probably your home right here, and it potentially can be your home for a while. Right here we have the pool room right behind us. I've tried coming up here and it just kicks you right out. So this balcony is your first spot where you're gonna do most of your damage, at the same time have a really clear cover into what's happening against the enemy team. And if you need to pull away from the situation, you have a lot of cover heading towards the left side of the map. Once the payload starts moving, you ideally want to stay on the second floor unless you need to go down for some heals. I understand that part, but this connecting bridge then can send you both to the left side or into the pool room itself. So I want to showcase my rotation to the alternate spot, which if in whatever case, if the team has already pushed the initial curve, you want to kind of hang around this ambulance spot. The reason for it is you do have that bridge right on top which you can jump into and be a little bit more aggressive, and we want to do this because this is a really nice power position, especially if you have your ultimate coming up. This is a very narrow street in here, and your ultimate can bounce back and forth, especially now with the update to Squirrel Girl's ultimate. We really love how much this has made Squirrel Girl even more feared. Her ultimate is one that can't be ignored, so ambulance is a really good spot here. I am showcasing also that ideally you can always go to the left of the street. Depending on where the team is pushing from, you can choose the left or right side of the ambulance, but you definitely want to hang around here and make decisions based off what the enemy team is doing or how far they're pushing in. Spot number 2 is actually super close to ambulance 1, which honestly, this is just such a hectic point right here in the map. A big choke point. If the payload start coming in close to ambulance number 1, you can definitely hold from bust up depending on if you have a good angle as what's happening on the right side, or you can just hide behind this ambulance and throw a lot of initial damage onto the opposing team. As you guys know, the biggest thing with Squirrel Girl is to want to do crowd control and area denial, so we definitely don't want them to push past this point, especially early in the map. Ideally, you can hold this angle as long as you can. If you need to go ahead and leave it, you have 2 exits to the right side. You can either jump forward through the payload path, or you can just go through the 2 doors that's right behind you on the right side. I do want to point out that I don't know if this is by design or if this is something that's going to change in the future, but this payload doesn't stop automatically till it reaches this point. And we're going to talk about this because this is where you want to be anyways. Okay, and this is your spot number 3, the checkpoint entrance, where your payload stops for the enemy team. Ideally, you want to do as much damage here as possible as well if you can hold. The only problem here is that there's a lot of entrances here, a lot of secret paths. You can have people funneling in from your left side or the right side. So you just have to make sure that when people are pushing the payload, you take full advantage if most of the team is pushing in where the payload is. You can, as you guys saw, definitely use this section for your ultimate. You can actually do it right before or after as well, but this is an ideal area for you to go ahead and use your ultimate, just because it will bounce back and forth between all the nearby enemies, and in such a narrow space, this is where your ultimate is more optimal. This is the alternate spot also as well, and I'm going to showcase it because this is a place where you can do a lot of blind damage. You don't necessarily know what's happening behind that payload, but you can do a lot of damage from up here, and if you need to jump down with the rest of your team for more visibility, then you can do so, but you're a lot safer initially in your push. Make sure that you're using as much cover as you can from this collapse area on the left. Now, also something to note, if you have to backtrack here from either the first floor or from the collapse area that we initially held them from in checkpoint 1, this is a nice little area where you can have cheeky angles here for any team that's coming in with the payload or coming in from the left side. Ideally, you want to hold this angle as much as possible. Anytime there's a nice little curve in the hole for you or in the street, you definitely want to hold it as much as possible with Squirrel Girl. Blind damage really helps here because they don't want to push past the blind angle until they know for a fact the rest of the team is able to push forward. Alright, spot number 4 is this little platform right here by the collapsed train, and as soon as they start pushing in through this little broken area, This is where you can put so much damage. It's gonna be very miserable for the team if your team is here. Now, of course, this only really works if you have your full team here already set up for defense. If you don't have the team set up for defense, then ideally you can spend some time in here, but definitely know that retreat is imminent, and you do have this little entrance to the right side where you can join the rest of your team or backtrack all the way to the top side. Before we move forward, I do want to point out that this is one of the optimal locations that I found so far, where my ultimate does a ton of damage. There's a lot of walls where it'll bounce back and forth here on defense, and honestly, it's such a nice little choke point for your team to put a lot of damage in addition to the squirrels. In mid-game, control is everything. Use her tree leaping and wall climbing abilities to dominate high ground positions, and don't forget to deploy your squirrels in narrow corridors. They thrive in tight spaces where enemies have no choice but to retreat or fight back. You guys are probably following a pattern here. This map is filled with so many choke points where Squirrel can wreak havoc. Just watch out for subway entrances, and honestly, if you're landing tons of damage, you will get your ultimate multiple times in this map. In the late game, controlling high ground is your golden ticket to victory. I really like this spot right here because you can scout any enemy coming in through the tunnel here, and most of them will be funneling from this direction anyway. You can alternate back and forth between that top spot and this wall side here, so you can scout enemies that are coming in from the fixed entrance. And honestly, if you need to push back, it's easy for you to remember that you have this entrance, and you can just keep on piling damage from above as much as possible. And yeah, honestly, just maintain all that high ground as much as possible. There is so many collapse building here towards the end where you can just maintain your high ground as you're raining down acorns on the enemy team, or if you need to, just go ahead and ultimate with your squirrel army so that they can continue to do as much damage in that narrow street as well. Ideally, I think this map was almost designed with Squirrel Girl in mind, if you ask me, just because there's so many choke points, so much high ground, and ideally so many turns where you can just blindly put in damage on the enemy team as they're pushing in on the defensive side. Now let's switch things up and talk about offense. Honestly, this is one of the key things that I love about Squirrel Girl on this map. I don't know that she has any decay when it comes to also using her in the offensive side, because the same angles that you're using on the defensive end, you will also potentially be using them on the offensive side. This spot is really tough to get through initially, and honestly, this is just similar to every map, right? That initial push is always a tough one, but even if you die, come back to this spot. That top spot is everything. You just have a line of sight into what's happening, how many enemies are on the balcony, how many enemies are pushing from the bottom floor as well. And ideally, you will want to scout for your team as much as possible so that you know where the pushes are coming in from. Whenever the payload actually moves, just switch over and start using your balcony as needed. Something to note about this map is that the payload actually favors the offensive side of things, in my opinion, just because you have so much cover on the back side of it. So you can hang back behind that payload, and then once you get to this point, very similar to what I spoke about for the defensive side of things, you have this bridge, you have really high angles that you can showcase. You can always use the ambulance here as well to rain damage upon enemy teams, but again, you do have the payload coverage. So something to notice here that it's a lot different is you're more flexible with your angles. You don't really have crazy line of sights that you have to worry about from the enemy team, as you're the one pretty much dictating what angles you're gonna give them. With that in mind, let's jump right into spot number 2, which is right here. This bust up is everything because you have so much cover coming in from the actual payload entrance, but you can actually see quite a bit of angles here. You can see the entrance to the left side or the right side, so you can cover a lot of angles for your team and scout any pushes that are happening or flanks on the opposing side of things. This ambulance right here also gives you some cover on the right side if most of the team is pushing from the left. Again, it just all depends on when the enemy team is pushing from. At number 3, and after you pass this grand central entrance, it's this gargoyle statue. This spot right here, it's really good because you can see what's happening on your left side entrance or the actual entrance of the payload. Lots of coverage here from this angle, and if you are dying or if you need to backtrack to your team, it's very easy to jump on top or go back to your team if needed. And if you make your way up here, then it's really easy just to hold them back as your team is trying to push. We can talk about what everybody has at this point. You can talk about any ultimates that are ready, because this choke point right here that's coming up is a tough one for the offensive side. This part right here can get extremely hectic, and if most of the team is here within the actual room, then you should unleash your ultimate in here. But if you want to preemptively do it, if they're not already here and you want to push them so that your payload can get at least to this point, feel free to do what I'm doing right now. Just send it on its way. Again, it bounces back to the nearest enemy, so it's gonna create a lot of hecticness, and make sure that you do crowd control then on the opposing side so that they can't push forward to the point as easily. And again, your payload is your home on offense, so don't be afraid to just walk alongside it, get some cover. Your tanks and DPS will be pushing along as you continue to protect the back line of healers with all your acorn range damage and anti-dive mechanics that Squirrel Girl just literally excels at. The cool thing here is you can use all of these broken space and you can jump on top as I'm doing in here. This is one of my favorite spots because you have so many angles coming in. And this spot just gives you so much information that you can use for your team as you're calling out any ideal pushes to finish this map here very strong. Okay guys, and that about wraps it up for my guide to Squirrel Girl's best angles and spot on the Empire of Eternal Night Midtown map. If you found these tips helpful, as always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Rivals guides. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys are dominating the battlefield with Squirrel Girl. And honestly, I think this map, as I mentioned earlier, is definitely designed with Squirrel Girl in mind. If you don't believe me, there's a section of this map where you can find plushies with Squirrel Girl and Mr. Fantastic. So if you spot it, let me know in the comment section where it is. Alright guys, until next time, stay nutty, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye. Backline. Ready? I'm an alt. Okay, I'm going. Push.
Heals. Oh my god, he's slow.
There we go.